This episode is brought to you by Bureau, our title sponsor. With 8 vibrant locations in Miami's best neighborhoods, Bureau is the perfect co-working place to work, network, and thrive alongside other entrepreneurs, creatives, professionals, and local businesses. Find your space at bureaumiami.com.
Well, we're here with one of our guests that we've been looking so forward to get on this podcast, Bob. We have Bob Knakal here with us, all the way from New York.
The legend himself.
I don't think you understand how excited we are to have you on this podcast, Bob. We have so many questions for you, and Ben and I have been following you for a long time, and I think we have a confession to make too, Bob. We have a man crush on you, and it's not just because of your good looks. All right, it's the brains behind what you do, and we're not shallow like that. So it's we value your intellect, Bob, and awesome. We're super excited to have you on the podcast.
Felipe, Ben, thank you so much for having me, and pleasure to be here. Now I'm in beautiful South Florida. Happy to stop in and do the podcast with you guys.
And Bob's a tequila drinker too, so the man crush just keeps getting stronger, Ben.
Yeah, it's solid. Check mark after check mark.
Check mark after check mark. So welcome to the 6th Borough, and cheers, Bob.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. This is awesome.
Cheers, Bob.
Thank you. Cheers.
Like Bob's words, you can't go wrong with 1942.
No, you can't go wrong with 1942. And you've done a bunch of podcasts. Is this your first podcast where you've had a cocktail on it?
No, actually, I did one other, the Broker Bunch, which a couple of guys in New York do, and we had some scotch doing that one, which was a lot of fun. But hey, this is great. At first time doing with tequila, and beautiful South Florida, perfect place to do it.
Awesome, Bob. Well, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the podcast. Well, first of all, before we get into it, I got connected to you, and you probably don't remember this. About 8 years ago, Joe Del Vecchio connected us. And I had this startup zoning software, and I called you up, left him a voicemail, and within 5 minutes, he had called me back and left me a voicemail.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy shit, like, this guy's a legend in New York. I'm from New York originally. Like, I had spoken to some of my friends in real estate, and like, everyone's like, you need to talk to Bob, you need to talk to Bob. And, sure enough, I call the man. 5 minutes later, he's calling me back.
That's it. You got to be responsive in this business.
Yeah, and he's like, yep. He's like, you guys are coming up to New York. I'd like to meet with you guys. We were showing him this software. He gave us an hour to meet with him and his team. And, that's the kind of, I think, you make yourself available to people, and you respond quickly.
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of shocked. I do a lot of social media stuff now, and I put my email address out there. I put my cell number out there. I think you have to be accessible.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times the cell phone rings. I don't recognize the number. There's no name, so obviously the people are not in my system. And it turns out to be a lead or a great call or somebody I've been trying to get in touch with and haven't been able to. So you have to be out there. You have to be willing to listen to people and figure out what is worth spending time on and what's not.
Well, thank you so much for spending an hour with us, 8 years ago. And I think we went to your office when you were at Cushman, I believe it was. So thank you, Bob. So this is really a biography about you. Our podcast, it's really a story about our guests and their path, which is often, people look at it and say, oh, this is easy, and it's certainly not, and there's ups and downs, and so we want to get into all of that. And then, we'll kind of go into what's happening today with you.
Okay, great.
So, born in New Jersey.
Born in a little town called Maywood, New Jersey. Which
how far from the city?
Only about 10 minutes over the George Washington Bridge, but very, very small town. It had a population back in the day when I lived there in the 60s and 70s. Population about 14,000 people. So we didn't even have our own high school. I had to go to Hackensack High School along with all the kids from South Hackensack, Rochelle Park, and Maywood. We all went to Hackensack High School.
Gotcha. And your parents are from where originally?
My parents were from the city.
Yeah. They're New Yorkers?
All four of my grandparents came here from Czechoslovakia.
Oh, wow.
All born in Prague. And back in the old days, different ethnicities had different neighborhoods.
Yep.
And the Czech neighborhood was the low 70s on the east side. And my dad grew up on 73rd Street. My mom grew up on 71st Street. And they met at a Czech music school. My dad played the violin. My mom played the piano. They met at a Czech music school, and the rest is history, as they say.
And your grandparents came over from Czechoslovakia. What year, more or less?
I don't know the year. I know my maternal grandfather was very, very young. I think he was single digits age-wise, and my fraternal grandfather was in his mid to late teens.
Okay.
And came over. My mom's dad was a plumber, and my dad's dad was a baker. He worked for Fink's Bakery, which is still around in New York. I remember him telling me he took the job because he said, if I work at a bakery, I'll always be able to bring food home for my family.
Wow.
I'll always be able to take care of my family.
That's so cool.
That was my father's father.
Cool. So the blood is 100% Czech.
100% Czech.
All right.
100% New Yorker at this
100%
point.
New Yorker.
That's right. 100% New Yorker. That's for sure.
That's incredible.
After I got out of school, I lived in the city for 39 years. Just recently moved my wife and my 16-year-old daughter out to Long Island. So I'm a Long Islander now, but spent 39 years living in the city.
And so you went to school in New Jersey. What kind of, and I'm sorry, your parents, what did they do? They were not in the real estate industry.
No, not at all. My dad was a high school principal. Fortunately, not.
What did he say? Oh, wow. Yeah.
He was an educator. He was a science teacher and then became a vice principal and a principal in Mahwah, New Jersey. My mom was a housewife. And
siblings? I
have one older brother.
Okay.
Did that make it harder growing up with your dad as a principal? Were they pretty hardcore with academics?
No, I always really, really into sports, and my dad was not an athlete at all. So, I could pitch a no-hitter, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's nice," and but if I got a B on a test, I was in trouble.
Yeah.
So, academics was very, very important in our house because of my dad's perspective on everything.
And were you a good student?
Pretty good. Not good. I went to the Wharton School at Penn, which I'm very, very proud of. But had it not been for baseball, I never would have gotten into Penn.
Oh, really? You got in for baseball scholarship, or
the Ivy League schools don't have athletic scholarships, but it helps you get in. And my high school baseball coach, Dave Seddon's older brother, Bob Seddon, was the baseball coach at Penn.
Oh, nice.
So that connection definitely helped. So Bob would, routinely come up to northern Jersey to see my games, and it was a great in for me. Fortunately, I was a good baseball player, and that more than academics got me into Wharton.
And any other sports you like to play growing up?
I played basketball. I played basketball through high school, but then in college just played baseball.
Okay. And what was your favorite subject in high school?
From a school perspective?
Yeah, we're not talking girls here.
I don't know. Yeah, well, that goes without saying. But I don't know. I think that's interesting. I've never been asked that question. I like social studies. I really like math a lot.
Yeah.
That's I think it's one of the reasons why I got into the investment sales side of the business. I really like numbers, like math, and so I think that was, I have to say that was probably math was my, algebra, geometry, stuff like that.
That kind of aligns with the baseball thing too, right? There's a lot of math in baseball, a lot of statistics, a lot of number adding up.
Yep, no doubt. And I've always been a big statistics guy. As a baseball player in Little League, I even kept track of my pitching statistics.
Yeah.
I knew how many strikeouts per inning I had, how many walks and hits and all that kind of stuff. So I always kept track of numbers, and that affinity for statistics has stayed with me through real estate.
Served you well.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Were you a hustler as a kid? Were you an entrepreneur? Or you
Always. I was a hustler. I was a hustler as a kid. I always went all in on everything. I was the kind of kid, my mom had trouble getting me out of bed in the morning to go to school, but on snow days, I was out the door at 7 o'clock with my shovel. I spend the whole day shoveling people's driveways and walkways. And, as a 9 or 10-year-old kid, I made $300 and I spent every nickel on baseball cards. But yeah, I mean, those are great times.
That's awesome.
Always looking to go all in on stuff.
Any other entrepreneurial jobs that you had throughout high school?
Never had a job.
Yeah.
Never had a job. I remember my aunts and my grandfather lived right across the street from us growing up. And one year, I guess I was probably 7 or 8 years old, they bought me a little cardboard storefront so I could play like retail store guy. And I'd ask my aunts to take me to the store and have them buy me inventory for the little cardboard store, and then made them buy the inventory from me again. So my cost of goods sold was 0. My profit margin was 100%. That was a great business. That was the first business venture.
It's an incredible business venture. They say selling ice to an Eskimo. Watch this. Bob's like, hold my beer.
So shoveling driveways. What other kind of hustle things did you do in high school and during that time?
Yeah, not a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I played sports all the time. There was always some kind of athletics going on, either playing in the Maywood Boys Club or in high school. Again, basketball and baseball took up all of my time, and always hanging out with the guys.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of friends. My only friends actually that are not in real estate are 7 guys I went to kindergarten with.
That's
and
amazing.
We still hang out together, and but we were always in the park playing, tackle football or basketball or whatever. And in Maywood, the fire department rang the fire whistle every night at 6 o'clock, and that was the signal for hey, the game's over, go home, eat dinner, kind of thing. So it was pretty neat, but always doing something athletic.
Cool.
So you worked through high school sports, and then you went to Penn right after high school?
Yep.
For undergrad, and then you went to Wharton for business school?
No, I went to Wharton undergrad.
Oh,
Wharton
undergrad.
has both a graduate and an undergraduate program. I was in the undergraduate program, which is kind of the same as the graduate program, except they let you take it over 4 years instead of 2, so it's a little easier. But it was great. I loved my time in Philadelphia. I thought when I went to school in Philly, I thought it was such a big city. Now it's like just a little neighborhood of New York. But Philly was a great city. Really enjoyed it. One of my favorite foods to this day is still cheesesteaks.
Oh, speaking of cheesesteaks, we're heading over to Miami Central, and there's a cheesesteak place over there for you, Bob.
Okay,
Pepe's.
Awesome. Well, I tell you, I think I had cheesesteaks for breakfast every Saturday and Sunday. Throughout college. No, hey, you have a beer hangover, nothing better than a greasy cheesesteak to make that headache go away.
That hits the spot. I believe it. So what was when you went to school, did you major in business right away? You knew that's what you wanted to do, or?
No, don't forget, 1981, Wharton School. I want to be the next Gordon Gekko like every other Wharton kid, right? Everybody who goes to Wharton or went to Wharton at that time wanted to be a Wall Street guy, as did I. So it's spring break freshman year, and I say, all right, let me put a little resume together. I got to get a summer job that's going to look good on my resume for the future. So I drove around Bergen County, dropping the resume off at every commercial bank and investment bank I saw. I came out of a Payne Weber office in Hackensack. Across the hall, I see Coldwell Banker. And I think this place is a bank. I go in, give them my resume. Later that day, they called me, hey, we'd like to interview you tomorrow. Can you come in for an interview? I set up the interview. It's 1981, no internet. I go to the library, look up this bank, and I see it's a real estate company. I'm like, oh, shit, I don't want to get into this business. But they were the only ones hiring college kids for the summer. I took the job, loved it. The guys couldn't have been nicer there. Spent a lot of time with me. It was basically a young, hardworking, energetic group of people. Seemed like they were making a lot of money, had fun. I spent my first summer there.
Between what years was this in college?
This was between freshman and sophomore year, my first summer. So I spent the first summer in what they called their data bank program. where they had kids driving around, combing the streets, very similar to what I did with my map room, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but drove around Morris County logging in information on every commercial building I saw, whether it's office, retail, industrial, wrote down the size of the building, the tenants, the stuff like that for their data bank. And so I did that the first summer. The second summer I went back and I ran that summer program for CB. And then the third summer, I got my New Jersey salesperson's license, and I was an assistant, or what was called a runner back then, for an industrial broker, a guy named Tom Mulaney, who I'm still friends with. But I was showing industrial space. Says similar to what you guys do. I was showing industrial space to tenants and buyers in Morris County that third summer. And then, that summer they interviewed me, said, hey, we'd love you to come work here after school. And I said, hey, guys, thanks. But, I had either the balls or the stupidity to say, hey, do you mind if I go interview with the guys in New York City? I might want to go work in New York. And they set that up for me, and I had the interview, and they said, yeah, we'd love to have you come. So I knew before senior year that I had my job lined up already, so that took a little of the pressure off.
But was this all commission-based, or how did these jobs work?
The summer jobs were completely salary.
Okay.
I forget what the salary was. A couple $100 a week or something. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. And
what did you like about real estate? What was the first thing that really attracted you to it?
It seemed like I'd hear the guys telling stories about deals, and that was really cool. And just that, these guys were walking around the office smiling all the time. And then you'd hear them, on the phone with clients. And I just loved the buzz. I loved the open bullpen. I've sat in a bullpen my whole career, except for 3 years at JLL, which they made me do because they didn't want it to seem like, all the HFF guys were in offices and all the JLL guys, my guys were not in offices, and I hated being in the office. I thought it was horrible. And to this day, now my new company, BKREA, I am pinpoint right in the center of the bullpen, and I think it's great for the people around me to hear what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I want to hear what they're saying. And that really was also part of the experience of working those summer jobs, was being in the middle of hearing all this stuff going on. It was pretty cool for a college kid.
I bet.
Like a true New Yorker, just loves the buzz, the energy. Like to this day, when I go to New York and walk the streets, you feel the energy. Like there's something that's just like, I want to work. Like it just makes you want to just grind.
Yeah, it's I always look at two things that are very indicative of the pace of New York. One, at the grocery store. You could have 400 items. You're through the line in 43 seconds. They're just like moving things down, and you're out of there. And then, like I have a country house in Connecticut in the woods, and you go to the store and they pick it up, and I get this at home too, and bring it in. You like it takes you 4 hours to get out of the store. And then the other thing is, you go to a deli. Right, you order any kind of sandwich you want in New York City. Literally, they make it in 20 seconds, and you're out the door. And then other places, it's like 20 minutes to get your sandwich. So it's just the pace of New York is pretty crazy. You get so used to it that you don't really realize the pace of New York until you're somewhere else,
like South Florida,
and you see how long these things take.
You experienced it on the way over here today.
That's it. Yeah, traffic. I was in a traffic jam today. Sorry again for being late. But.
No, we can sympathize very easily. Yeah. So you're where did we leave off? You got your license in your third year of school,
and then you go to New York to interview.
To New York to interview. They great interview. They offered me the job, so I went into.
And that was a full commission job, right?
Full commission, right, which my dad was so upset. My dad's an educator,
right.
Went to Columbia.
That's a risky move for someone, the salary man.
Yeah, and my folks didn't have a lot of money. My dad's a high school principal, my mom's a housewife, and they pay for a Wharton education. I come home, hey, Dad, guess what? I got great news. I'm going to be a commissioned salesperson selling real estate. And, he's like, what the hell are you doing? What did I spend all this money on your education for? And, it took a while. It was, I think my dad didn't really appreciate the real estate business until I think it was the end of 85. Paul and I had done an ad of tombstones of all the deals we had closed. And it was a full page in a newspaper called the Real Estate Weekly, which was very, very big back in the 80s. And I brought a copy of the paper home, gave it to my dad. Hey, Dad, look at this ad that we did. And he said, oh, yeah, it's nice. And I said, oh, it probably doesn't mean that much to him. And then the next time I went to visit him, he had the ad cut out of the paper, framed and sticking on the wall. So I was like, all right, I finally got Dad's approval. That was great.
Well, to someone like him, commission just seems like winging it. Like, good luck. Let's see what happens.
Yep, without a doubt.
And so what was your first year of full commission like? What was that?
Well, first it was half year. I started July 16th, 1984. Didn't close any deals in 84. You have my baseball card there. You can see big goose eggs in 1984. But 1985 was a great year. We started to get some traction. I think March closed our first deal, 1421 3rd Avenue, a 20,000 square foot vacant furniture showroom that we sold to American Medical International for the first MRI clinic in New York City.
And what was your process like to start? Like starting from scratch? I mean, were you paired with someone more experienced that was showing you the ropes? Like, how did you have a prospecting? Like, did you have a system that you were following? What was your business plan?
Here's what we did. So I show up the first day, and the boss at the time, CB, had about 50, 60 guys doing office leasing, had about 15 or 20 in retail leasing, and there were 4 people in investment sales. 3 of whom had about 20 years of experience, and 1 of whom had just gotten out of a training program. So the boss says to me, hey, Paul Massey just got out of a 1-year training program. Follow him around. He'll show you where the coffee machine is. And that was the training. That was it.
Sounds like most brokerages.
Yeah,
So Paul Massey, your partner, which then becomes your partner, he's got 1 year of experience. He's your mentor.
Well, he has 1 year in a training program.
Yeah, exactly.
He had been in sales for 2 weeks. So we're hanging out. We had lunch the first couple of days. Second day, we're having lunch. I'm like, hey, these guys with 20 years of experience don't even notice that we're here. Why don't we just team up, we'll work together, we'll split everything 50-50, see how it goes. And that was the start of a 30-year partnership. So talk about serendipity and luck.
And did you guys sign anything? It was just a handshake?
No, handshake.
I love it.
Handshake. We didn't have documents until we started Massey Knakal. And, even my relationship with Paul, we didn't even need documents.
Yeah.
But 30 years I was partners with him. We had over 10,000 meals together. We had only one argument, which fortunately he won because in 2007, we got a $50 million offer to sell the company. I wanted to take it. He didn't.
50 or 15?
50, 50. And we, for a variety of reasons, the deal didn't happen. But that was the only argument we ever had in 30 years as partners. It was pretty wild.
And he wanted to take it, or I'm sorry,
I wanted to take it. He didn't want to take it.
He didn't want to take it.
Look, we started the company. We had nothing. I mean, we ran the company on credit cards for 3 years. I ran my life on credit cards for 10 years. And this company's offering us $50 million. I'm like, shit, let's take it. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Paul didn't want to, so it slowed things down. And then by the time, we were kind of figuring out what we wanted to do, the GFC started to kick in a little bit, and the world had changed. But it was fortunate that Paul won that argument.
Good, yeah.
Ended up working out, yeah.
It did.
So you and Paul are decided to team up. What's your first move? How do you guys hit the streets? What's the strategy?
Well, the CB preached the territory system. They said, have a territory, get to know everything about the neighborhood, and call everybody on every block. So it's kind of like a residential farming system. And we agreed to do that. So we did. And I remember in late 85, one of the guys with 20 years of experience came up with a portfolio deal. 2 of the properties were in our territory, and went to the boss and said, hey, I'm not bringing these punks in on this deal. And the boss folded like a wet noodle and didn't back up the rules and said, okay, go ahead. And we were excluded. So we're like, this sucks. What's this all about? I thought we had rules. And so we actually that made us want to leave the company. And so this was probably in 86, early 86, Because in 85, we had each made $176,000, which was a lot of money in 1985, and also made us the #1 salespeople in that office.
Ben, you know what they say in real estate, if people don't know you, they're not doing business with you.
Exactly. That's why the Built World podcast works with top-of-mind public relations, because being a best-kept secret sure doesn't pay the bills.
Paula Uspa-Abbott, the brains behind Top of Mind PR, is a former real estate journalist, so she knows exactly what makes the media pay attention.
And let's be real, getting in the press isn't just about bragging rights. It's about building credibility, landing deals, and making sure the right people know your name.
Whether it's top-tier media coverage, killer storytelling, or just making sure you're the one people think of first, Top of Mind PR has you covered.
Want to stand out? Hit up topofmind-pr.com or email info@topofmind-pr.com.
Because in real estate, if you're not visible, you're invisible. Ben, you and I are all about PropTech, and if there's one tool we absolutely cannot live without for our commercial real estate brokerage business, it's Vista.
Absolutely. Vista is incredible. We use it every single day, and we're always wondering, how do they do this? Every evening we get an email from them with real-time closed transactions. No more waiting around for months for the property appraiser to finally update.
Yeah, whether you're doing industrial, retail, office, land deals, they have every closed transaction. And it's not just the speed, Ben. The details are on point. Seller and buyer info, contact details, phone numbers, emails, everything is accurate.
It's hands down our top prospecting tool to farm for warehouse deals in Hialeah. Vista keeps us one step ahead always. It's also the best way to search for comps when putting together opinions of values for clients.
Head on over to Vista.com and use code BuiltWorld and get 30 days free access today. VIZZDA.com.
Some of you might know that I'm in the middle of building a Live Local project right now, and finding an internet provider was way more annoying than it should have been. Endless acronyms, pricing all over the place, and me chasing these guys for proposals. Then luckily, I came across Celerity Fiber, South Florida's boutique internet provider for new developments and multifamily communities. Working with them feels like working with a company your friend owns. They actually answer calls and texts, send quotes fast, and are genuinely great to work with. Celerity designs and installs fiber internet built for modern living. Fast, reliable, and ready from day one. From luxury high-rises to affordable communities, they deliver high-speed, scalable internet with white glove service and local support. The kind big internet service providers just can't match. So if you want to future-proof your property and keep your residents happy, check out celerityfiber.com. That's spelled CELERITY, fiber.com, and let them know the Built World sent you. Celerity Fiber, powering connections, elevating experiences. But how did you do that? Was that just cold calls to owners?
Cold calls.
And what are you telling these owners as fresh kids?
The first couple of listings we got, we just begged people to hire us. We said, look, we have no other business. We've never sold any, but we knew the market. We could say, hey, look, there's X number of buildings in this area. Here's the average price per foot, price per unit. Here's all the metric, the average cap rates. This is how many buildings sold this year, how many sold for the last 3 years. We could demonstrate that we knew the market well. And we just went in and begged people. We said, look, we have no other buildings to sell. We're only going to work on exclusives. So if you give us an exclusive, you're going to be our only client. You'll have our full attention. And I remember the first exclusive we ever got was a little commercial townhouse, about 4,000 square feet, at 115 East 55th Street. It was owned by John Coleman, who was a guy he owned 7 or 8 Ritz-Carlton hotels. This was his corporate headquarters. And we met with the guy 8 or 9 times before he finally caved and hired us. But we just basically begged. We begged, said, please hire us. We'll work our butts off for you.
And they could see how hungry you guys were and that you were smart. You had the data.
Yeah. And so we implemented that system. And then in early 86, we go to Chemical Bank, which was our bank at the time, said, hey, we need a $500,000 loan. We're big shots. We were the top salespeople at Coldwell Banker last year. Where do we sign? And of course, our banker says, hey guys, wait, you don't get it. That's not the way it works. You could go start your business, have a 3-year track record, then come back to us. We'll talk about a revolving credit line or something like that. And we were so dejected, walked back to the office. And so for the next 2.5 years, we took a scrape off of every one of our deals and saved up about $400,000 to start our company, which we did in November 15th of 88.
Wow. And I guess back then the startup costs were a lot higher than it is today.
Well, it was, we felt that in order to survive for a year, we needed the $400,000.
For 1 year?
Yeah, and probably didn't need that much, but just wanted to feel comfortable that we'd be able to make it. And then, of course, we leave in November of 88. 89, the market started to tank a little bit, and then the savings and loan crisis was in full bloom by 1990. So, fortunately, we didn't get that loan in 1986, because if we started the business in 86, we would have been out of business during the S&L crisis. Our burn rate was only 15 grand a month. So we were able to make it through with credit cards and loans and things like that. But if our burn rate was 25 or 30,000 a month, which it probably would have been had we started in 86, we never would have made it through the S&L crisis. So I'm the first one to admit there's been a lot of luck in my career. I also believe the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
Of course.
But you got to have luck on your corner, because so many things are out of your
You
control.
got to put yourself in the way of luck, right?
Right.
So, I mean, $15,000 a month burn rate sounds a little high.
15.
Yeah, 15. I mean, what were you were getting an office there?
Phones, office,
Yeah.
office space, health insurance, all this, printing costs, all kinds of stuff.
So let's talk about the printing costs a little bit, because you started doing mailers as well. You had a newsletter, and so you were mailing market reports to property owners. And then you slowly started creating a newsletter as well.
Yeah, Felipe, we were creating content before that
exactly.
expression ever came
Yeah,
into
so you guys
being.
were creating content.
Yeah, we still have, you go to bobknakal.com, you'll see our newsletters from the 80s.
Oh, I have to go
there.
check
Oh,
that
that's
out.
awesome.
So it started as a little 4-pager and then grew to, I think we had it at the peak, it was 32 or 36 pages.
Wow.
We sold ads in it, 5,000 a clip to help offset the cost. But at its peak, the circulation was over 330,000 a quarter.
Oh, wow.
And
You guys were putting out the newsletters quarterly or
quarterly,
monthly?
every quarter. We didn't miss a quarter
Yeah.
since we first did it. I think the first one we did was in the beginning of 89. We did not miss a quarter till the time we sold the business.
Wow.
That sounds like a full-time job in and of itself.
We always said to be successful in commercial real estate, you only have to work half a day. Doesn't matter what 12 hours you work, you got to work 12 hours a day and 6 or 7 days a week. We put that thing together, and it really set us apart. It differentiated us from other people who weren't doing that kind of thing. But, before email became popular, we were sending out 3 million pieces of hard mail a year.
Wow.
So think about what our printing costs were, what our postage cost was.
Yeah.
But people still remember it. Look, we sold the company over 10 years ago, and I'm doing work for Related and Sterling Equities in Willets Point by Citi Field. We assembled land to build a new soccer stadium there for the New York football soccer team, and there were people there. And Willets Point, if you don't, probably not familiar with it, it is like a third world country. There are streets there that are unpaved. There are parcels that don't have utility hookups. So it is like really, really as grimy as it gets. You steal a car, want to get it chopped up, you take it there. And
Sounds like Hialeah.
Yeah, it sounds like
there'll be like
sounds
a
like where we're
number of
prospecting.
places that will do that for
We're
you.
going to take you out there to go to a trip down memory lane,
There
Bob.
you go. All right. Well, let's not walk. I call owners saying, hey, I'm representing Related and First Sterling. You want to sell your property, and these people say, Knakal. I say, yeah, remember Massey Knakal? Oh, yeah. They didn't know who I was. When I started making those calls, like, hey, Bob Knakal from JLL. JL what? They didn't know what JLL was, but I said Massey Knakal. Oh, yeah, the green and white mail. You guys always send the green and white mail. You haven't gotten it in a while. What's going on? I said, we sold
That's
the company
incredible.
10 years ago, but they still remembered it. And, we carpet bombed the market with that stuff.
So being the OG, content creator in real estate, I should have probably looked at this before. I didn't even realize your old newsletters were there. But what was in those newsletters? What was the kind of content that you were creating?
Everything. The first salesperson we ever hired is a guy named Ed Winslow. I hired him in 1988, and Ed now has coined the phrase proof stacking. And he applies the Massey Knakal business model to every kind of business there is. You're a painter, a roofer, whatever. He said, and it all revolves around demonstrating proof that you can do what you say you can do and how well you've done it for other people. And that's what the newsletter was. It was deal stories. Hey, we just listed this property. Here's all everything about it. Hey, we just sold this property. This was the details of the property and what happened with the seller and the buyer. And it was just, and market statistics.
Yeah.
How much stuff is selling, what are the prices. It was a demonstration of our capability. And that's proof stacking to the max. That's what you want to do. You want to let people know, hey, I've done what I said I can do. I've done it for other people. Other people are happy with what I've done, and I can do it for you too. And like I always say on social media all the time, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. That was a great way for people to get to know me. And, I have to say that it played a big role having Massey and Knakal as the name of the company, has served me to this day, that people still know, say Knakal, it's a weird name. People know that name, and it's because of the millions and millions and millions of pieces of mail that we carpet bombed the market with for so long.
Amazing.
And you guys are just relentless with it.
Never miss. We told everybody, if the part of your program, you had to contact on the phone 40 owners in your territory a week. That was the minimal goal. But you had to send a piece of hard mail once a month to everybody in your territory. And we monitored mail that came back. We always had return receipt requested.
Yeah.
So we knew if somebody send out 1,500 pieces of mail and 400 came back, we're like, hey pal, what's going on? Are you updating your list? Or why are we getting so much back? But most of our land, these were days when publicly available information was not that great.
Right.
I mean, we used all kinds of techniques to get that information. Today, you go online, you get somebody's shoe size, home address, where they live, cell number. But back in those days, the stuff was not readily available. So we, would call up the retail tenants in the property and say, hey, this is Joe McCluskey from the New York City Fire Department. You got fire violations on that building. We have to talk to the owner right away. Give me the number. And 90% of the time, They'd give us the owner's number. Awesome. So most of the folks who did our mailings, they were getting, we sent out 1,500 pieces, maybe 2 or 3 would come back.
Wow. That's awesome. So it's all about refining the data. It's a totally different world back then.
Yep, without a doubt.
So you and Massey kick off. You start carpet bombing. What was the progression of the firm from there? Do you guys start hiring associates right away?
No, we grew very slowly. From 1988 to 2001, those 13 years, we had gotten from the two of us and a secretary to 21 people. So very, very slow growth. But then 9/11 happens.
Oh, wow.
And 9/11 was a big, big turning point and inflection point in the company where we basically saw every company laying people off, downsizing. It was a really challenging time, but people were getting laid off left and right. And these are good quality people, accountants, brokers, attorneys, really good quality people. So up until that point, Paul and I had been interviewing every candidate ourselves. And we said, you know what? New York is tough. We're going to bounce back. Let's go hire a director of HR and go hire all these people, that good quality people that are out of work. And so we hired Gia LaMarca to be our head of HR. And 2 years later, we had 150 people.
Wow.
So we had grown very, very significantly. And then, the market starts to come back in 2003. And other companies are waking up saying, hey, the market's coming back. Let's go hire some people. We already had hired 130 people who had a couple of years of experience, and we just ate everybody's lunch. It was at that point at which we started doing 4 times the number of transactions as the number 2 firm. From 2001 to 2014, CoStar started tracking the market in 2001. The number 2 company in New York had sold about 1,300 buildings over that period of time. We sold over 4,000.
Wow.
So we were a little popcorn stand of a company, only working in New York City, competing against regional, national, and global companies. And we were kicking their ass every day. I mean, we lapped the field by more than 3x for 14 years in a row.
That's insane.
You know, show me where any business in real estate has done that anywhere in the United States. I don't think it's happened. But it was because we intensely trained our folks, built their self-esteem, ran the business with a servant leadership management style.
Talk a little bit about servant leadership. What does that mean exactly?
Servant leadership means that you're there to help the people around you do better than their best, to train them. And training them does 2 things. It gives them a higher level of efficacy with respect to what they're doing, but also shows them you care about them. So we had very, very rigorous initial success training program. Then we had a continuing success program for the whole company. And it's building up their self-esteem, giving them feedback, letting them know how important they are to the company. And, everybody in the world talks about servant leadership, but very few people actually do it. Paul and I actually did it. And you see it today. My proudest legacy is that today in the New York City investment sales world, there are 33 companies or divisions of companies that are either owned by or run by people that we taught the business to.
That's amazing.
And obviously it was you and Paul that started the training program. Did you bring in experts to help you also create the curriculum for this training program? How did that all work?
Yeah, we hired a director of training.
Yeah.
And we always had our senior people, Paul and I included, that would teach segments of the classes, but we had a director of training. We brought in for our continuing success training. We brought in outside speakers. You know, Bob Cialdini, the head of the psych department at University of Arizona, is probably the leading authority on persuasion in the U.S. We had him come in. A couple of my Wharton professors, Richard Schell, who wrote a great book called The Art of Woo, Tom Donaldson, who came in, did a training program for us on business ethics, Bill Urey, the Harvard professor who wrote The Power of a Positive No, came and did a session for us. We had some great guest speakers come in, and just to make people feel like what they were doing was important is so valuable. You know, if you look at every study that has ever been done on job satisfaction, you would think, oh, money must be at the top. Money is never at the top of that list. Almost always at the top of the list is feeling as if what you're doing is contributing to the success of the company, or that you're appreciated for what you're doing to help the company achieve its goals. We made our people feel that way, whether it was the top producers for sure, but the receptionists, the guy who ran our mail room, sending out 3 million pieces of mail a year. You tell that guy, hey, Harold, we love what you're doing in the mailroom. You saved us 6 cents a piece by bundling it this way and doing this, and you have a relationship with you. We love what you're doing. That guy, for the next 3 months, everything was done perfectly, because he had such pride in his work, and it built up his self-esteem. And so when companies don't give you feedback, that's the kiss of death, because then you feel like they don't give a shit about me.
Yeah. You've hired probably hundreds of people in your career. What separates the great ones from the mediocre ones?
Okay, well, one of the books I love, and again, go to bobknakal.com, you'll see my suggested reading list. One of the great books ever is by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And Collins, the main thesis there is that the great companies figure out what they can do or want to do better than anybody else in the world. And every decision they make, they think about whether it's going to help them achieve that objective. Whether they get Coke or Diet Coke in the kitchen, they say, oh, how is this going to help us get to the place we want to get to? And so that comes down to expertise, and I'll go into 3 things that I've seen routinely in people who are absolutely at the top of this industry, brokers who are at the top of the industry. Number 1, expertise. You have to be an expert at one thing that's narrow enough so you can understand every single thing about it. You really get it under your fingernails. Nobody knows it better than you, not even the property owners themselves. Be an expert. Be an expert in something narrow that you could say, hey, I do this, I only do this, I'm not going to do that. If I get this opportunity, I'm referring it out to somebody who does that. I'm just doing this one thing, and I'm going to become known as the go-to people for that particular type of deal. You get to that status, you've taken this historically volatile income type of business, and you've created an annuity out of it. So expertise is number one. Number two, passion. You have to love it. You have to pick something that you really, truly love, because no matter how great you are, you're going to have tough times. The market always has been, is, and always will be cyclical. Through no fault of your own, you're going to have challenges. You could be the greatest broker in the world. You're going to have tough times. You got to love it. That passion, that love of the business will get you through those tough times and put you in a position where you'll be around to take advantage of the good times that will inevitably come back. And then the third thing is being able to use discipline well. And I say use discipline as opposed to have discipline, because every human being has access to the same exact amount of discipline, but we all choose to use that differently. And so I always go back to what Abe Lincoln said about discipline. He said that discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And you have to always be thinking about what you want most and not make the short-term decision. Think about the long-term objective.
You know, Felipe, ever since we moved into Bureau, my productivity has been through the roof. I mean, I might actually be getting things done for once.
The energy at Bureau just makes work fun. Plus, with 8 locations across South Florida, from South Miami all the way to Hollywood, there's no excuse for not finding a spot to get your shit done, Ben.
And we're not alone. Over 500 local companies call Bureau home. Everything from creative agencies and real estate firms to tech startups, law firms, and media companies. It's a melting pot of brilliant people, and we don't include ourselves in that category.
We definitely don't include ourselves in that category. Bureau really has space for anyone, whether you're flying solo or have a team. There are suites starting at 100 square feet all the way up to 2,000 square feet. They also don't try to lock you into long-term agreements, and everything is month to month.
Let's not forget the important stuff either. The coffee is top tier, staff is incredible, and has a very entrepreneurial vibe. It's not just a workspace, it's a place where work actually gets done.
That's right, Ben. So if you want to level up your workday like we try to do every day, check out Bureau. You might even catch us sipping some espressos between podcast sessions.
Or tequila.
Definitely tequila.
Tell Bureau the Built World sent you, and you'll get 50% off your first month's membership. See you out there. Cheers.
Later.
Builties, Cafecito Club is back. November 14th at Miami Central. We're grabbing coffee at Rosetta Bakery on the second level. Come out and pound some coffee with us.
We're going to be at the Brightline Station, otherwise known as Miami Central, 9 a.m.-ish. This is probably our 5th or 6th Cafecito Club. Come out. We're just going to grab coffee and chat about real estate with the Builty community. So again, it's November 14th, 9 a.m. at Miami Central.
Friday, November 14th. See you guys there. This episode is brought to you by Built World Advisors. Yeah, that's us. We're not your typical commercial brokerage. We combine deep market knowledge with a media platform that actually connects to people doing deals. The developers, brokers, architects, and attorneys.
Let's not forget the investors, Ben. From warehouses in East Hialeah to off-market gems in Alapata, we help you find value where others aren't looking. If you're tired of waiting for opportunities to land in your inbox, let's talk.
Built World Advisors, real estate for the people who get shit done. You can check us out at builtworldadvisors.com.
And it seems like you did that too. I mean, we read your book, Selling Buildings, and you guys were making money, but you guys weren't spending money. You had 1 or 2 suits that you would just switch out the shirts on, right? And you kept your expenses very low, keeping, foregoing the immediate gratification for the long-term goal of building Massey Knakal and putting the money back into the company.
Yeah, we plowed money back into the company every chance we got. If the decision was, hey, am I going to go buy a new car or do like a great capabilities book, we were doing the capabilities book.
Yeah.
We never chose ourselves over the good of the company. And I think that's one of the reasons why the company had the level of success that it did, is we were constantly looking to grow the company, have the company do better quality materials for the company, more mailings, more advertising, more whatever it is that would give the company an advantage. That's what we were after.
And what kind of advertising were you doing back then? were you guys paying for advertising or?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Where were you guys?
Real Estate Weekly, as I mentioned, a number of other publications that we advertised in. But you had to do that, and increasing the size of the newsletter.
Yeah.
Think about, I don't even remember what our printing cost was, but 32 pages times 330,000.
I can imagine.
And it was, we were doing 4-color printing.
Yeah.
Our first couple of newsletters were just black and white. Then we incorporated green. Then you'll see during the savings and loan crisis, we went back to black and white. And then we went back to 2-color, and then we went to 4-color. But we always wanted to continue that proof stacking, to show people what we could do, how we did it, promoting the work that we had done. And, it was a great process, but you had to constantly stick to it, constantly think about what you wanted most, not what you want.
And how did you have the conviction? I mean, we've talked now, we're up until like probably the early mid 2000s, and you've already been through the SNL crisis, 2001, the 9/11 attacks. How did you have the conviction that this is just going to keep coming back? You knew better than to wait to hire all those good people that were looking for jobs.
Well, Ben, that was totally a risky thing, right? We got, again, luck. We got lucky that in 2003, the market came roaring back. If it didn't come roaring back, we would have been out of business. Because even though all the people we hired were commissioned, there's still costs associated with those people. So it's really important to make calculated decisions. We made the decision saying, look, we're betting on the fact that the market's going to come back. And we just got lucky that it did.
It wasn't, but you'd seen it come back before, right? You saw it come back after SNL.
I'm a big believer in never betting against New York.
Yeah, it always cracks me up when people during COVID were like, oh, New York's over us. It's like, guys, New York's New York. And now the new conversation with Mamdani coming.
Still, look, we lived through Dinkins, we'll live through this guy if he gets elected, and, it will be okay.
It's always New York. New York is New York. It's super interesting. So we've come up to, you've staffed up like crazy with really talented people that you were able to poach from everyone freaking out after the 01 attacks. And your firm's just going gangbusters up until you mentioned you got an offer pre-GFC that you guys didn't end up taking. And then heads down as usual, back to business?
Yeah, heads down, but then the GFC kicks in and we have to fire 25% of our people to stay afloat.
Wow.
Which was really horrible. I absolutely hated that, but that's, that comes with the territory.
Yep.
And had to fire them and, deal with some tough times. We always ran the business like a family business. Even when we got to 250 people, we were up to about 250 people in 07. Had to cut 25% of the staff. The minute the market started to come back in 2010, we started hiring people again, got back up to 250. But the GFC was challenging, but not nearly as challenging as the SNL crisis in the early 90s was.
Why is that?
Well, number one, we had no book of business. We had no revenue coming in the early 90s. And so we were literally living on debt. At least during the GFC, we still had some revenue coming in. It was just a question of how to allocate the revenue to stay alive. But
I guess you had enough experience and contacts in that time. You could pivot, maybe do some note sales, do some creative things.
Yeah, we did all kinds of stuff to get by.
Right.
So it was good.
Interesting. And then comes 2014. Tell us what that process was like.
Yeah, well, interestingly, 2014 was absolutely the perfect time to sell our business. Perfect. In New York City in 2014, 5,534 buildings were sold. That was an all-time record by more than 10%.
Wow.
So perfect time. But we decided in 07, actually, that we'd look to sell in 2014. And because of the conversations that we had with CBRE at the time, we knew that we would be on 5-year service contracts with whoever bought us. So we looked ahead and we said, well, we're going to get through this period. And, in 2014, if the market doesn't suck, let's think about selling. Because in 2015, February of 15, Paul's turning 55. And our thought was, if we're going to be on 5-year service contracts having to produce for the buyer of our company, they're going to think we'll do a better job if we're in our 50s than if we're in our 90s. So in 2014, let's see how the market's doing. 2014, we get to the beginning of 14, market's roaring along. We're like, all right, let's go hire an investment bank, put the company on the market, see what happens. And interestingly, we had, over several months, we had like 8 or 9 bids, ranging from like the low bid, I think it was like 23 million, to 2 bids at 100 million. And it was like everything in between. It was like spread out.
Crazy.
So interesting, when you sell a building, like all the bids are clustered
Right.
in one area. Here, they were so spread out.
And what are they based on? Just like a multiple of EBITDA? Or?
Yeah, it's a multiple of EBITDA, what the company thinks they'll be able to do. Can they save money by cutting costs with redundancies? You don't need 2 CFOs, that kind of thing. But again, we just got really lucky. We had the first offer that really got us excited. Cushman offered us $100 million with 25% cash and 75% on an earnout. And then Meridian came along, offered us $100 million without those terms. And then we got Cushman, which we wanted to do the deal with Cushman. We got them to amend their bid from 25% cash with 75% on an earnout to 75% cash, 25% no earnout, just time delayed. And if you stayed at the company, you got the money in 3 years. And if you left the company, you still got the money, but you had to wait 9 years.
Wow.
So, and unbeknownst to us, Ed Forrest, who was running Cushman at the time, it turned out to be a great friend of mine. He had to have us because the Agnellis, who owned the company at the time, were gearing Cushman up to sell the whole thing, which they did shortly after our deal. They sold it for $2.2 billion. But they had a huge donut hole in capital markets. So buying Massey Knakal filled that donut hole for Cushman, made the company a lot more marketable. Because how could you have a global company without a strong capital markets business in New York City?
Yeah.
And you guys owned about 85% of the company when you sold, right?
We owned 84.
84.
We had 9 other partners that owned 16% of the firm.
And who were these partners that bet on you guys?
Yeah, no, look, nobody really bet on us other than by not leaving. Yeah. Because nobody bought in. We gave those interests to people.
Okay.
And these are the top producers, and like our head of admin, Christy Moyle, who had been with us since 1989, end of 89. We gave her a point just for being around for so long. She was like the mother of the whole company. So we took care of people.
And you took care of them. It seems like at the time of closing, it wasn't something that you had granted equity to them previously. You're like, okay, we close this deal and we're going to take care of the people that have gotten us here.
Yeah, well, if they had equity, the 16% was real equity.
Okay.
So they got real distributions based on their equity position. But we took care of some other people along the way also.
That's great.
It's so cool to see that because I think it's pretty rare in the brokerage world.
Yeah, well, that's why, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of turnover. We realized, I tell the story in the book that, Paul and I were always the first ones in the office, and we'd be sitting there some mornings, and at our headquarters at 275 Madison, we had about 50,000 feet of space and 3 floors, and Paul and I are sitting there by ourselves, and we said, what happens if nobody shows up today? And we really thought about that. So it was, it was something where, we understood that our assets went up and down the elevator every day, and needed to take care of them. And I think we did a pretty good job at that.
That's so cool. And how did you handle when you mentioned 33 firms were started or spun out from Massey Knakal? How did you handle when someone wanted to leave and start their own thing? Because
we basically supported them.
That's because isn't that one of the 48 laws of power? Don't outshine the master.
No, look, we only had 2 people leave that were of consequence. Only 2 people leave before we started the company. All these other 33 companies were all started, mostly except for 2, were started or people left to go run divisions after we sold the business.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
So they took the whole ride with you, and then they kind of spun out after that.
Yeah.
Got it. And then after it closed, you stayed with Cushman for a term?
I had 3.5 years at Cushman.
And how was that, Bob? I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You like to roll up your sleeves. Next thing you know, you're like Mr. Corporate Man, never worked a corporate job before.
Yeah, look, I will be the first one to tell you, I was not happy the 10 years that I was at the big firms.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go back and change having sold Massey Knakal. It was a life-changing thing for me. I mean, we started two kids in 800 square feet with a secretary, and we sold the business for $100 million. I mean, that's a good day for anybody. And the first couple of years at Cushman were pretty good. They left us alone. We stayed in our old space, and somebody from corporate would come over once a month and walk around for a half hour and say hello. But we had different business cards, but nothing really changed. Then they breached our contracts by bringing in another investment sales team from Eastville, which I don't blame them for doing. If I was running Cushman & Wakefield, I would have done the same thing. I would have worked harder to integrate our firms because that platform had the highest dollar volume of any producing team in the United States. We had more buildings sold than anybody else. They had more dollar volume than anybody else. And the fact that they couldn't put those two ecosystems together was probably the biggest screw up in the history of New York real estate, in my opinion, because we could have been dominant for years and years and years.
And what could they have done to make that have worked?
They needed to make those guys play a little nicer in the sandbox.
Yeah.
It usurped our power. And what happened was that we shortened our contracts from 5 years to 3.5 years. We got a couple of more dollars. We got a little more support, but basically nobody was happy.
Yeah.
At that point in my career, to want to be able to work on a transaction over $75 million and have to go ask permission to do that, I'm like, hey, you know what? Thanks.
Yeah, that's
right. So so quickly, Paul left, went to run for mayor, and then I knew I was going to be leaving. I went to JLL and brought 53 people with me from Cushman, all of whom were with me at Massey Knakal. And then, shortly after I got to JLL, a year after getting to JLL, they buy HFF on the proviso that HFF would run everything. Another thing that, created an issue, a breach of my contract. And unfortunately, our employment contracts at JLL were not all cross-collateralized. So although it was a breach for me, it wasn't a breach for any of my other folks. And didn't want to leave them because I felt responsible for them, having brought them all over to JLL. So it was not a happy period of time for me. And the best illustration I can give you is that, I feel like my time at the big firms was like looking through binoculars with Vaseline on the lenses. And then as soon as I got fired, the lenses were crystal clear. Everything became so vivid, and so every call was so important, every meeting was so important, and just completely changed everything. And I have to say, I've never been happier in my professional life than I have in my new iteration of my career, which is BKREA, which I'm having a ball with.
So just to talk a little bit about getting fired.
Better pour Bob another drink for this one.
We were following you, and then, we see the article in the New York Times about the map room, which we want to talk about. And a week later, Bob is fired from JLL. And we're like, holy shit, who the fuck fires Bob Knakal? You gotta be fucking crazy.
I fired twice. Cushman fired me too. Cushman, that was the funniest thing of all. Cushman comes to me and says, hey, you're not responding to our request. They wanted to extend my contract. And I didn't really want to stay there, so I wasn't responding. And, they offered me stock options and the company was going to go public and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, I don't want your stock options. I remember looking at Sean Mobley, and it was like I told him his kid wasn't good looking. and it was really something. But, they came to me, and I got a call on a Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning and said, Bob, look, we're at the end of our rope. we'll give you $3 million or $5 million, I forget, $3 or $5 million to stay for 3 years, or you're fired. I'm like, okay, can I talk it over with my wife over the weekend? He said, talk to anybody you want, but you got to let us know by 5 o'clock today. So it's about, I don't call him back. It's like 5:30, and my phone starts blowing up. And so one of my buddies calls me, and I picked up the phone. He says, Bob, so what happened? Cushman fired you? I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, look at the real deal. So I found out by reading the real deal that I was fired by Cushman & Wakefield. So then fast forward to the because I didn't take the 3 or 5 million, whatever it was, and then I in the JLL period of time, they had hired a new marketing person, and a big part of my career is talking to the press. So I had specifically in my contract, I had a clause that said I have unfettered access to the press. I can't talk about the company or what the company's doing, but I could talk about deals, the market, anything specifically related to what I did, unfettered access to the press. So I'm sitting at my desk one day. My buddy Brian Sullivan from MSNBC calls up, says, hey, Bob, we're doing a piece on real estate. Why don't you come out? Could you come to the set tonight? I'm like, sure. So I go to the set, and normally these national television things are like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So I think it was like a 6 or 8 minute piece. I thought it went really well. The next morning, my phone's ringing off the hook. The marketing person called, Bob, what did you do? You're on national television. You can't do that. You can't do it. What are you, out of your mind? You got to get permission. I said, look, I don't have to get permission. It's in my contract. I know you're new, but my contract says I have unfettered access to the press. That can't be the case. I'll get right back to you. Of course, I don't hear from the person. And then 2 weeks later, the New York Times does a 1.25-page profile on me in my map room. And first of all, the Times rarely does a profile on anybody. So the fact that they're doing a profile on a real estate broker, I thought it was unbelievable. And again, that ran in the Sunday Times. Monday morning, the phone's ringing off the hook. They're like, Bob, we have to meet with you right away. I'm like, yeah, I'm serving as an expert witness in a land arbitration for the next 2 days. I can meet with you Wednesday. That Wednesday was the 14th. Interestingly, I had a conversation with my wife, so I thought they were gonna let me go, and because I had also we had to do a self-evaluation at the end of the year, and I wrote in my self-evaluation, I said, look, I hate it here. I think this place is a dead end for me. I came over and I was running a 4-borough business. Now I'm like 1/4 of a 1-borough business, and nobody's ever given me a piece of feedback. Nobody said, hey, Bob, you're great. Hey, Bob, you suck. Hey, Bob, we like what you're doing. Bob, we hate what you're doing. I feel like this is a dead end. I put that in my self-evaluation. So
awesome.
Said to my wife, I said, look, they're probably going to fire me. You okay if they don't fire me, I'm going to ask if they'll let me go. Are you okay with that? Well, I'm not going to have any income for a year probably. She's like, look, I know you hate it there. Just whatever, try to get out of your contract. And so I set up the meeting for 10 o'clock with the executive committee member who I was going to meet with. And as I come in, the glass conference room walls, so I walk into the room. As soon as I walk in, the head of HR comes in right behind me. I'm yes, I'm getting fired. So I said, Bob, I'm really sorry. We're going to go in a different direction. And I said, oh, so you're firing me without cause, right? And they both look at each other, pause about 10 seconds, like, yeah, without cause. I'm like, okay, great. How do I get Cobra? And that was it. And 10 minutes later, I was in the map room making calls, and you know what? It was a great day. It was a great day.
So it sounds like your better half is a great sounding board for you. Where did you guys meet? And I know you have a daughter as well.
Yep.
She's about to go to college. So give us a little bit of background because we've mentioned this a couple of times on our podcast that Warren Buffett says the best decision you could ever make is the person you marry. And so
I totally agree with that.
Give us a little insight on who the the woman behind the man is.
Yeah, my wife Cynthia. She is the love of my life. I'm incredibly happy. We met at the dentist office.
Okay.
Believe it or not, and in very, I have to back up. And
Was this the long hair era? Or?
It was, yes, it was the long hair era.
She likes the flow.
You had a good run as a bachelor in New York. I mean, you didn't get married till you were almost 40. That's probably another other podcast that we want to do.
Yeah.
So
but so I have to go all the way back to childhood, and my mother, for whatever reason, did not believe in Novocaine. So I had so many cavities as a kid, and I hear the sound of that drill, and I have a Pavlovian response that it just freaks me out. So I always set up my dental appointments, the last appointment of the day, kept a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue at the dentist, and even for a cleaning, I got gas. So I'd have a couple of shots of scotch, go in the dentist chair, get the gas, and then, do whatever you want to me. So very out of character for me, and my wife was hired, Cynthia was hired to be a new patient coordinator because Rosenthal Appa Group, a cosmetic dentist, and it's very expensive to get a set of veneers. So they have somebody who's just a salesperson to sit with patients and talk about all the different aspects of what the process is like. And because I had been a patient of the firm long before she got there, I never met with her. But I was very friendly with the people, very, very nice staff, very friendly with the people there. And I'd see my wife walking around in the background. So I finished my appointment one day, and I get in the car, and we're going down 76th Street. And I see these two girls from the practice walking down the street. So I tell my driver, pull over. So I roll the window down. I say, hey, girls, you need a ride somewhere. And, of course, that is so out of character for me.
You're gassed up, Johnny Walkered up.
Looking at my cell phone, and I'm not paying attention, but I'm feeling good. I have my blue. I have my, my gas. And so I'm like, hey, you want to ride? So they talk to each other for a second, and then my wife said, yeah, I'll take a ride. I said, where are you going? Penn Station. So she gets in the car. My intentions were completely noble.
Sure they were, Bob.
They were, no. I was in a relationship with someone else. My wife was in a relationship with someone else. And so we got in the car, we chatted, get down to 39th Street, by my office, Penn Station's 34th Street. So I said, hey, very nice talking to you. Get out of the car, have my driver take her to Penn Station. And so 2 weeks later, I go back to have my work finished up that I was there for.
Bob's going to the dentist every 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I have the cleanest teeth in New York. No, but so I go back 2 weeks later, and at the end of my appointment, I walk out of the office, and standing at the elevator is my wife. And Cynthia is turning beet red because she thinks that I think that she was just waiting for me at the elevator to get another ride. but of course I say, hey, you want another ride? I remember you. And so we get in the car again. Great conversation. Couldn't have been nicer, but we were both in relationships. So, took her down. I said goodbye. My driver takes her to Penn Station. Don't see her again for 9 months. Go back to the dentist's office. In the meantime, I broke up with the girl I was seeing. She broke up with her boyfriend. And I was on this 6-month kick where I said, I'm not going to, for a year, I'm not going to get serious with anybody. I'm just going to, lay
play the
low.
field.
Yeah. And so she was looking for somebody to date. And she said, hey, I remember that guy, Bob Knakal. He was really nice.
What year is this, Bob?
This was... shit, I'm going to be in trouble. I don't remember.
You are. Hopefully she's not listening to this podcast.
This was 06.
Okay.
06. And so she asked people at the practice, because they knew I was talking to them, talked to the receptionist, knew all the people there. They said, yeah, he just went on vacation to Aruba by himself. We don't think he's seeing anybody. So Cynthia told everybody, when Bob comes in, put him in the exam room and then get lost. I want to talk to him for a few minutes. And her intention was to ask me out on a date.
Oh, wow, Bob. Holy shit.
But she says, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. Can you tell me about it? And so I said, hey, if you want to talk about real estate, let's go out. I'll take you out for a drink. And that set up the date. We went out. And
does your wife speak Spanish?
She does.
Yeah?
She's Argentinian.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we went out to Asia to Cuba on Madison Avenue. And I knew I was cooked from the minute we got together. About a half hour into our drinks, we were only supposed to meet for drinks. I said to her, "Hey, you free for dinner? You want to grab a bite?" And she says, "Okay." So, I was taking this low period that when I was not wanting to get serious, I'd take girls to like a very casual restaurant, whatever. So this very fancy French restaurant on 52nd Street called Le Grand Nuit. And I call up the maitre d'. I'm like, "Hey, Aramel, I'm sorry it's short notice. Can you get me in tonight for 2?" He's, "Oh, Bob, come on, anytime." So go over, take it to this nice French restaurant, and that was it. I knew that day I was going to marry this girl.
That's awesome. What a story.
And like every good man, he married himself a Latin girl, man.
Yeah, my wife's Argentinian as well. Yeah,
Nice.
I got to speak to my kids with the Plasha accent.
Awesome.
You know, the double L, the SH. That's awesome.
And you have a daughter. Does she speak Spanish as well?
She's taking Spanish in school, and
Yeah.
yes, Cynthia does help her with her homework, but they don't talk around the house. But my wife speaks to her mom in Spanish.
Okay.
Which is nice. But yeah, I have a daughter, 16-year-old daughter, who is like the son I never had, and I say that in a nice way because this kid is the biggest sports fan that
That's
there
awesome.
is.
I saw you guys were in Minnesota I don't know when, recently.
Yep, yeah. My daughter played ice hockey. She's on the
Dang.
tennis team at Manhasset High, and huge sports fan.
That's awesome.
This kid, I go into her room one night. She's first of all, since she's about 5 years old, she wakes up watching the NHL Network. It's the first thing that goes on.
And you're a big Rangers fan too.
Ranger season ticket
Yeah.
holder since '84. So my daughter is watching the NHL draft, and I'm like, "Oh, I'd like to watch it. This is the first round." She says, "No, this is the sixth round." Sixth round. She says, "Yeah, Dad, that's Jorgi Jorgensen. The Canucks will probably draft him. They need a sixth defenseman." I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And she actually just got a job on the NHL's junior advisory board.
Oh, so cool.
She's called the Power Players. She's one of 15 kids that were picked out of over 1,000 that applied across North America. And the NHL has a bunch of teenagers basically to help them figure out how to make the game more appealing to young fans.
That's smart.
So yeah, so it's really cool. So she's great though. She loves football and baseball
That's
but
awesome.
hockey is definitely the number one sport for her.
Is she gonna get into real estate too, or no?
No, she thinks what Dad does is the most boring thing in the world. No way she's getting into real estate.
Spoken like every teenager ever. Yeah. So let's bring it to the map room. Huh?
Yeah, let's talk about the map room because I love maps. I love a good map, or in general. You start the map room basically during COVID, right?
Yeah, look, I've always sold a lot of land.
Yeah.
And in order to value land, you need to know what the competitive set looks like in terms of what is that new to-be-built building going to be competing with when it comes out of the ground. And remarkably, in New York, that's supposed to be such a sophisticated market, there's information about the condo development market, but virtually nothing about rental units, hotels, office buildings, medical buildings, healthcare buildings. So, there's every residential company does reports on the condo market, but one company's report will say there's 9,000 units in the pipeline, another one will say 6,000 units in the pipeline. And it occurred to me, when did they start counting? When did they stop counting? So I've always wanted to go out and count buildings, because if I'm in front of a building and, they're building concrete and the crane's lifting buckets of concrete up to the top of the building, it's under construction. If it's not, it's not. So for 10 years, I wanted to go out and do this. So March 12th of 2020, JLL says to us, "Hey, there's this pandemic thing coming. Go home for 2 weeks and then come back." So go home watching TV with my wife.
And you're living in the city at this point.
Living
still.
in Manhattan, yeah. So my doctor calls me up, says, "Hey, Bob, just heard a rumor. They're going to close Manhattan down. They're going to quarantine the whole island, shutting the bridges and tunnels. Get out of town right away."
And that's when half of New York comes to Miami.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So I didn't have a place in Miami, so I get the family in the car, and we're going up to the country house in Connecticut. And 2 weeks later, it was very clear we were not going to be back in the office. So I had to go back to the apartment and get some stuff. So drive down one day, pull up the FDR Drive on the east side, and I'm like in a science fiction movie. There's nobody. There are no stores open. There are no cars moving. There are no people walking around. Zip. And for whatever reason, it occurred to me, hey, you know what? Perfect time to go count buildings. So I called up my team. I said, get into the office, make copies of the Sanborn tax lot map. I'm going to take them into the street because I don't want to write stuff down and I don't remember what I wrote down. And I'm going to highlight everything under construction, everything that's been demolished, every building that's built to less than 25% of its max density. So I spend 220 hours in the field over 4 months, walking every block of Manhattan south of 96 on the east side, south of 110 on the west side. And I bring the sections of the map into the office, start doing research, and basically...
And the COVID police are okay with you doing this in New York? Because it's pretty harsh over there.
They were fine. No, it was easy. I'd drive the car, stop in the middle of the street, get out, walk around for a half hour, get in, drive to another place, get out, walk around. There was nobody. There was nobody there.
Probably never seen New York like that before or after.
It was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild. So start taping pieces of the map together to see what's happening in different neighborhoods. Before I know it, I have a map that's 24 feet long and 10 feet wide. And on it is highlighted everything that's under construction, everything that has been demolished, every underbuilt building built to less than 25% of its max density, potential assemblage sites. And since we did that field work, we've been tracking every demo permit, every foundation permit, every building permit the city's issued. So we have the development pipeline nailed down to the square inch for those disaggregated into those 5 buckets: resi rental, condo, hotel, office, and miscellaneous for healthcare, education, anything else. And it helps us with our evaluations. It also is it's almost like sensory overload when a client comes into the office. Now, I'll tell you how effective it is. Over the course of my career, I've given probably about 10,000 pitches. I've won about 26% of them historically. In the map room, we've given 71 pitches. We've gotten 69 exclusive listings.
Wow.
Unbelievable. I never thought that it would be as effective as it is, but there's no way anybody could say that they know more about the land market than we do.
Well, it's so interesting because we're in a time where we're just inundated with data. You would think CoStar or one of these, software programs has all this data, but they don't. It's all outdated. We're all kind of depending on this mishmash of data, and what's the quality of that data? And you have the highest quality data.
Yeah, look, I always say proprietary data is the best data because you have it and nobody else does. And it's been remarkable how effective it's been in helping us win business. And, that is, when you have something like that, people have always said to me, Bob, why don't you digitize it? But I think looking at this map on a computer screen, it will lose everything. People come in, literally, they're overwhelmed. They look around. We have boards on the wall. We have the map on the table. And you want to know, how many hotel development sites have sold in the past 3 years. We give you exact number of rooms, everything you could possibly want to know. And, I always say the real estate business is not real estate. It's information and relationships. And to the extent you have great information and you can use that information to create really strong relationships, you got it made.
Yeah, that's insane. And so how do you take that going forward with what you're doing now at BKREA? Are you using AI in any ways in conjunction with the map? How are you utilizing new technologies?
Yeah, we're using AI in a big way. And I'll tell you, I'm the least technologically savvy person you'll ever meet. I'm happy my cell phone goes on. But the first person I hired at the new firm is a tech guy. He's an AI genius. He started AI companies. He worked in driverless cars for 6 years.
He's your CEO, COO.
Yes, Seth.
Yeah.
Seth Samowitz.
And how did you guys get connected?
He was pitching me on some of the software that he created.
Yeah. And how long before you started BK Real Estate Advisors?
Well, he was very smart. He said, "Hey, Bob, I think you could really take advantage of this, but why don't we would you mind if I sat in your office 3 days a week? And one thing led to another, and it just was a smooth transition.
And this was when you were at JLL still?
Yeah. When I developed the map, I was at JLL, and I wanted to have it be a JLL thing. So I said to the folks at JLL, I said, hey, could you give me 600 square feet so I could set up a map room? I have this vision, a map room, the map on a big table, boards on the wall. I need 600 feet. They're like, hey, if we give you 600 feet, we got to give everybody 600 feet. Why are you so special? I'm like, all right. So I went down the block and I rented 600 feet and I set up the map room, and the thing has kind of developed a life of its own. And the efficacy that it has in terms of converting people into clients is just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this. What is 69 out of 71? It's gotta be
like 97.
Better than 26%.
That's like 96%. It's gotta
71. Be. Yeah, it's 97.1%.
Amazing. We got to build a map room, Ben.
We do.
No, I'm telling you, it's proprietary data and present it in a way that other people don't have. What we all want in the world, in our real estate world, is to differentiate ourselves from everybody else that's trying to do what we do. If you're able to differentiate yourself, that leads to a real competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And expertise and specialty and proprietary data puts you in a great position to differentiate yourself from everybody else.
And so how are you using something like AI to go forward?
Well, two ways. One, we use AI to make funneling processes more effective and efficient. Funneling processes being prospecting and deal execution. And think about both of those things. You're going from thousands to hundreds to dozens to a few. Works beautifully for that. And then we also use it for data interpretation. And that is potentially the most powerful thing that AI can do, but going to be the most difficult thing for the real estate industry because most data sets in real estate are terrible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have this 30, 40 plus years of real estate data that now you're just putting through the AI, and it's just analyzing that data for you, and you're coming up with all sorts of interesting nuggets of information.
Yeah, but the reason why that long-term data has such high integrity is because the methodology for calculating data has been the same for 40 years.
Yeah, that's the most important thing right there.
Yeah, because look, at Oldco, we had 3 different heads of New York research over the 6 years I was there. One only tracked deals over $10 million. The second one tracked stuff over 500,000, and the third one over 5 million. So over the course of time, the data just has no correlation to each other because you're looking at different data sets.
Right, totally different things, yeah. That's something we always talked about. We actually met because Felipe co-founded that data and analytics company back in the day called Gridix. And one thing I always thought would be so powerful is if we could layer in, all things that would motivate someone to sell property: divorce courts, DUIs, arrest records, bankruptcy filings, etc., and pull that all together. Now with AI, you can kind of decipher. You could ostensibly do that and find the people that are most likely willing to sell and put extra emphasis on those people,
right,
as kind of like the lower hanging fruit. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, I think, in how you aggregate and deal with the data.
Yeah. Look at the old reliable: death, divorce, taxes, partnership disputes. Those are good motivators.
Yeah.
Quick question about you only represent sellers,
right?
You sell buildings in New York, development sites as well. You multifamily. Do you touch hotels? You do office as well?
No. My business has changed very dramatically. For 40 years, I was a generalist, selling all kinds of property. Our whole approach was geographically based. So within this box, you try to sell everything. Mm-hmm. And I think in the 80s and 90s, that was very effective because of the lack of publicly available data and the inaccuracy of it. Today, everything is so transparent. I think product specialization is much more important. And I'll give you an example. there are two main assets I think brokers have, market knowledge and time. And we spend our entire lives trying to get more market knowledge. Generally, the thought is you can't create time. I think you can create time. So I'll give you an example of the generalist. Last week, the generalist sold an apartment building, a retail property, and an office building, and is pitching an office building this week. That office building owner wants to hear everything about the office building that was sold last week, couldn't care less about the retail property and the multifamily property. So you spend 2/3 of your time is not accretive towards getting this week's assignment. But think about if you had sold 3 office buildings last week and you're pitching an office building this week. 100% of your time last week was accretive towards getting this week's assignment. You just created time. And so in this iteration of my professional life, I'm focusing on 3 categories that are all very, very highly correlated and synergistic. Ground-up development, redevelopment, and user properties. User properties are vacant buildings that are bought by someone to occupy for their own business. But if it's a vacant building, maybe it could be knocked down to create a new building, could be a development site, or redeveloped into change of use. So you asked about hotels. I've never sold an operating hotel because an operating hotel, to me, is not real estate. It's a business. Mm-hmm. I've sold hotel buildings, but for conversion to other uses. And that would fall in the redevelopment category. But today, somebody calls me with an apartment building for sale, I have people I refer apartment buildings to. Somebody calls me with a retail property for sale, I refer it to the retail brokers. I want to stick to what I do best because I want to create time that way. And it's leading to a very, very significant competitive advantage. Those 71 properties that we pitched in the map room, those are all either development or redevelopment opportunities.
And you only represent sellers. Do you bring all your listing assignments to market? Sometimes people don't want to take it to market. How does that work? Do you do off-market deals where you bring the buyers?
Never done an off-market. My value proposition has been the same for 42 years. I only sell buildings. I only represent sellers. I only work on exclusives, and I only work in New York. There's nothing opaque about that. Very, very simple. If you can't explain what you do in 6 or 7 seconds, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very narrow, but I love that because I never have conflicts of interest. I never have to remember what I say to anybody. I'm always trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to get hired to sell a property and get the maximum price. I'm completely agnostic as to who the buyer is. I just want to get as many bids as possible and get the highest price I possibly can get. It's the same thing over and over and over again.
So what do you tell someone like a seller that doesn't want to list? Because we come across it sometimes. We're like, oh, we want to sell, but we're not interested in listing. Like,
I say why?
Yeah, I mean, that's my question too.
I always say to people, look, there's no law that says you have to sell for the highest price, but why wouldn't you sell for the highest price?
I love it.
There's no do-overs in this. If you screw up and sell it for less than it's worth, you can't get it back and sell it again. You got to do it right the first time. So why wouldn't you? I use this as an example. So you're going to tell some brokers, yeah, I want to sell my building, but I'm not going to give you an exclusive. And that broker goes to a cocktail party that night or a dinner party. It's at a table with 10 people. And 2 brokers know about your deal. One has an exclusive, one doesn't. The guy without the exclusive might know one person at the table, might lean over and say, hey, you know what? Joe wants to sell his building. The broker who has an exclusive is going to say, you know what, everybody? My friend Joe wants to sell his building. Anybody interested? Where do you think you're going to get a better result? Why don't you want to list it? There is no rational reason why you wouldn't want to put the property on the market, on the open market. And so I've never done an off-market deal. First of all, I don't believe off-market even really exists. Because once you tell somebody you want to sell, it's on the market.
Right.
Yeah.
But that there is so many benefits to hiring an exclusive agent that I think in most cases, you can convince the owner that they should hire you to sell the building for them.
Love that. Love that.
Let's talk a little bit about your coach.
Rod Santamassimo.
Yeah, can you believe a guy like Bob
Massimo.
Knakal as a coach?
Exactly. How did you guys meet?
Okay.
And when did you guys meet?
Okay, 2011. I'll tell you, I get a call from this guy. Hey, Bob, it's Rod Santamassimo. I'm writing a book called Brokers Who Dominate. And I don't know who you are, but everybody I've spoken to says, I have to include you in my book. It's a book about the top brokers in North America. First of all, what broker in their right mind would say, I don't want to be in that book?
Yeah.
So, of course, I say, yeah, sure, I'll be in the book. So we do a series of phone interviews, and on the third or fourth one, I say, so, Rod, how many books have you written? You know, what do you write about typically? He says, oh, I'm not an author. This is my first book. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a broker coach. I said, a broker coach? What the heck is a broker coach? And he explained what he does, and it occurred to me. I said, you know, Michael Jordan has a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. Olympic athletes have coaches. What the heck? I'm going to give it a try. And first I started working with Rod. You know, I was doing about $6 million a year in commissions. And I said, Rod, I'm happy with the money I'm making. Just, I want to spend more time with my family. You know, my daughter was 3 years old at the time. I'm like, I want to spend more time with my family. So figure out how to make me more efficient so that I can make the same money, but spend more time with my family. And working with him rekindled my passion for the business, which had waned a little bit. And I ended up spending more time with my family and tripling my income.
Wow.
And I tell you, it is the greatest thing I've ever done. I highly recommend everybody work with a coach. Massimo is unbelievable. If you're not working with a coach, you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars a year on the table. It will make you money.
What did you change that you all of a sudden tripled your income?
Just fundamental things like realizing, tracking your metrics, making sure you know, at one point, we started with tracking 20 different things that I was doing. We got to a point where I was tracking like 180 different things, including what I was eating, when I was going to sleep, when I was waking up. I mean, crazy stuff. I was just so into tracking every little detail. And, you know, like one of the big things, he says, Bob, how are you keeping in touch with your inactive clients? I said, inactive clients, what's that? He says, well, you've sold a lot of property for a lot of people. How are you keeping in touch with them? I'm like, well, I'm not. He says, oh, you're an idiot. Put together a list of all the people you sold property for. They know you. They like you. You probably did a good job for them. And so when in New York City, the average turnover rate of the stock of buildings in Manhattan over the long term is 2.6%. In the outer boroughs, the average turnover rate is 2.2%. And so people don't sell all the time, but I know that about half the stuff that goes on the market actually sells. So about 5% of the stock is on the market at any one time. So if you're calling, you know, you're making prospecting calls, 1 out of every 20 people says yes. So when I make my prospecting calls, it's 1 out of 20. When I call my inactive client list, which now has over 750 people on it, I get a lead out of every 11 connections.
That's amazing.
So almost twice as effective. I wasn't doing that. How am I not following up with those people, right? So like examples like that. But working with a coach, I think, is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, so Ben and I did Rod's course about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. We've gotten a lot of great things from it. It's one of the reasons why we started the podcast. You know, one of the things is like, hey, you need to meet with someone prominent in the industry once a week. And so we said, you know what? Rather than going to dinner or to go in and grab lunch with someone, which it's highly unlikely they're going to want to have, you know, lunch with us. Why don't we start doing this podcast and inviting people onto the podcast and spend an hour and a half with them, and have a cocktail with them and build a friendship with them. So it's just that staying top of mind, you know, being, you know, in mailers, in social media, on emails. There's no silver bullet, right, Bob? You have to. there's different there's different things you have to do to just stay top of mind all the time.
Yeah, and Rod preaches all the time that it's all about market presence.
Yeah.
And the most important revenue generating activity a broker can do is make prospecting calls. But you have to send out your mass emails. You have to send out mass texts. You have to send out good old-fashioned hard mail, which I think is very, very underrated.
Why don't you show Bob our little market report to take a look? We want to get your perspective on this, Bob.
Sure.
And then we got to get going.
Yeah, we got to cut some cocktails.
Yeah, we have some cocktails to drink.
I guess one of my last questions to ask Bob while he looks at our little.
This is great. This is the kind of stuff that says these guys know the market.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you want to do. But hard mail, create content, do networking. My goal is do 261 networking things a year.
Dang.
That's one for every working day. Be on social media.
And you weren't on social media until a couple of years ago, right, Bob?
January 1st of 23, I started on social media, yeah.
So 3 years ago.
But you're on such a blitz. Like, why launch BKREA now? Why have all these ambitious goals? Like, you could retire on a beach yesterday.
And you're never going to retire, right, Bob?
No, I will never retire. I always say that, when they put me in the ground, I'll have deals under contract. My wife's going to have to collect the commission. But why? Because this is the greatest business in the world. I mean, you kidding me? I talk for a living. I'm not on top of a rock pile swinging a sledgehammer. I talk to people, interesting people all day long. I love it. I've been so lucky that this is a job for me and it's my hobby. My life is very simple. I sell buildings. I spend as much time with my wife and my daughter as I can. I go to the gym. I go to church. That's it. I'm a happy guy. That's what I want to do. And so, why do it? Because it's so fucking great. That's why.
I mean,
it's the greatest business in the world. And, last week I closed deal 2,361. A big baseball fan. It's a big milestone to get to 3,000 hits. I want to get to 3,000 buildings sold.
Love that.
And I want to also, my proudest legacy is the 33 companies or divisions of companies that are being run by people that I taught the business to. I want to create another subset of those people. I have great people in my company now, young guys and gals. I know that they're going to be running their own businesses someday. And that makes me so happy. That is very, very rewarding for me. I want them to do that. And I want them to stay with me as long as possible for my own selfish reasons. But you know what? I would be thrilled if they went out, started their own business, and were successful. And I got to tell you, I am so incredibly proud of what these folks have done. I think Paul and I profoundly changed their lives for the better. And you know what? That's a legacy I'll take any day of the week.
Amazing. Last question about your brokerage. What's the vision for it? You're staying in New York only? When you come into the 6th borough? Is this going to become national?
No. I don't want the new company to have massive overhead. We're just going to we have about 20 people now. We're going to stay 20 people. Or thereabouts. And, I have a couple of opportunities to co-market some stuff around the country. I'm doing a big development site in Chicago with a buddy of mine, and I'm probably going to do a big site in Nashville with a friend. But just to bring the New York capital from New York to these local markets in partnership with the local partners. But you know what? I want to have fun doing what I do. I'm tracking the key sites in New York City. I want to sell as many of them as I can. And, we just picked up, I closed the first $1 billion deal of my career, which was a series of 5 ground leases for the Brooklyn Hospital in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. That's about 4 million buildable square feet of space. So the whole little city is going to be built there. And just picked up another a 5 million buildable square foot development. And, we competed against the 4 biggest companies in the globe, CBRE, C&W, JLL, and Newmark. And the family that owned the property it was 3 different families that owned the property. Each family had 2 representatives on the board that was interviewing all the brokers. And the idea was, look, we're going to assign 1 through 5 to each of these companies, and the 2 companies that get the lowest scores will have come back for a final round of interviews. And my little popcorn stand was number 1 on everybody's list.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So we kicked all their asses. We got the assignment. It wasn't a second round. And that, to me, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to keep doing that.
I love seeing you kick the big guys' asses because there's no reason not to. So thanks for coming in, Bob. This is so fun to talk to you. I could keep going for another hour.
But we have a networking event to get to.
Yep.
And there's a shitload of people waiting for you, Bob.
Awesome.
So we're excited to head on over to Miami Central with you for a couple hours of cocktails.
Well, Felipe, Ben, thank you so much for having me on. And I wish you guys the best of luck with your new venture.
Thank you.
And if there's anything I can ever do to help you in any way, just let me know.
Yeah, this is really just such a present for us to spend some time with you, Bob. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All
My
right.
pleasure, guys.
Cheers.
Let's roll.